External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar is set to make a statement in Parliament later today regarding the deportation of 104 illegal Indian immigrants from the US. Now, the Indian government has taken note of the incident. The government is also considering a new law, the Overseas Mobility Bill 2024, aimed at establishing a framework, in fact, for the safety of Indian migrants. Meanwhile, a panel headed by Shashi Tharoor has presented a report on the issue, highlighting the need for better protection and support for Indian migrants abroad. The government's response to the deportation incident and the proposed new law are expected to be addressed in Jaishankar's statement in Parliament later today. Sheikh Mujibur Rahman's ancestral home in Dhaka was vandalized and set on fire, in fact, by a large group of protesters during a live online address by his daughter and the former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. The incident occurred on the 5th of February 2025, with thousands of people rallying in front of the house, which has been turned into a memorial museum. The protesters damaged the mural of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman on the building's boundary wall and wrote, "There won't be 32 anymore," before setting the house on fire. This is not the first time, let us remind you, the house has been attacked. It was previously set on fire on the 5th of August last year when Sheikh Hasina's nearly 16-year Awami League regime was toppled and she fled to India. Here's a report by my colleague Saurabh.
An evening of chaos and anarchy on the streets of Dhaka. 32 Dhanmondi attacked. This, of course, used to be the home of Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the founding father of Bangladesh as a country. Now, elements that seem to be determined to completely dismantle the legacy of the man who was responsible for creating the nation of Bangladesh, having fought the Pakistani military that was committing atrocities alongside the Indian army and finally liberated the country to form Bangladesh, now seems to be under attack from the same country's people, or at least a section of people who seem to be radical elements, extremist elements. The home was attacked while former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina was scheduled to deliver a speech, and of course this was called a bulldozer procession. The intent being very clear that they wanted, of course, to vandalize, destroy this property which had been turned into a museum in memory, in tribute of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. Now, earlier Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina last year had to flee her country. This was when a revolution took place. But since then, extremist elements, radical elements have had almost a free run in Bangladesh. Even yesterday, when this attack took place, there was very little action by the police or law enforcement. In a sense, a free run was allowed. This property was attacked. And this is, of course, significant of the larger situation in Bangladesh, where minorities continue to come under attack, especially the Hindu community, and also the legacy of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman is also being systematically dismantled by certain radical elements, extremist elements, under the garb of protesters who seem to be fighting fascism, as they say, that existed under the Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's rule. They say there were atrocities during Sheikh Hasina's rule. They allege that there were attacks, targeted disappearances, etc., and they will not allow that. However, they are now targeting the legacy of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina is the daughter of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, and this is not the first time that 32 Dhanmondi has seen violence. It has seen violence in the past. It has seen violence earlier last year, and it has seen significant violence in the past as well. So obviously, yet another example of anarchy and chaos on the streets of Dhaka.
United States Secretary of State Marco Rubio has said he will skip the Group of 20 talks in South Africa amid an escalating spat between Washington and Pretoria over a controversial land expropriation law. Now, Rubio's announcement on Wednesday came days after US President Donald Trump, in fact, threatened to cut aid to South Africa over its passage of legislation allowing the seizure of land without compensation in certain circumstances. Now, South Africa, which holds the G20 presidency until November this year, is set to host a meeting of foreign ministers from the 20th of February to the 21st of February in Johannesburg. Rubio said in a post on X, and I quote, that South Africa is doing very bad things, expropriating private property, using G20 to promote solidarity, equality and sustainability. He also said, M-job is to advance America's national interests, not waste taxpayer money or coddle anti-Americanism. US President Donald Trump signed an executive order on Wednesday seeking to ban transgender athletes from participating in women's sports, in his latest move targeting transgender people since returning to office earlier in January. Trump, in fact, signed the order at the White House, surrounded by dozens of children and female athletes. The order gives government agencies authority to deny federal funds to schools which allow transgender athletes to compete on women's teams. He also said he would be pushing the International Olympic Committee, in fact, to change its rules on transgender athletes before the Games return to American soil in 2028 in Los Angeles. US President Donald Trump has made a surprising announcement that the country would take over the Gaza Strip. The statement has come amidst the ongoing Israel-Hamas conflict and a recent ceasefire agreement. While the details of Trump's plan are unclear, his statement has sparked concerns about the potential implications of US involvement in the region. The Gaza Strip has been a focal point of tensions between Israel and Hamas, with numerous conflicts and humanitarian crises occurring over the years. Here's a report by my colleague, Samia.
US President Donald Trump is facing global outrage after announcing plans to take control of war-torn Gaza, relocate Palestinians elsewhere, and turn the Strip into the Riviera of the Middle East. Turkey slammed the idea as unacceptable. France warned it could destabilize the region. Meanwhile, Russia, China, Germany, Spain, Ireland, and the UK reaffirmed support for a two-state solution.
We've always been clear in our belief that we must see two states. We must see Palestinians able to live and prosper in their homelands, in Gaza, in the West Bank. That is what we want to get to, and that is why it's important that we move out of phase one of this hostage deal to phase two, and then to phase three, and reconstructing Gaza.
Australian Prime Minister echoed the stance, saying his country also continues to support a two-state solution.
What I would say is that Australia's position is the same as it was this morning, as it was last year, and it was 10 years ago, and it was under the Howard government. The Australian government support, on a bipartisan basis, a two-state solution in the Middle East.
In Gaza, Palestinians outright rejected Trump's proposal.
تصريحات ترامب هذه شيء مش منطقي. كيف احنا عشنا الحرب سنة و4 شهور وفي الآخر يجي هو يعطي تصريحات وإن احنا نطلع منها من أرضنا، هذه أرضنا وأرض أجدادنا، فصعب نطلع منها، أو هو يجيب سكان تانيين آخرين يسكنوا فيها. فلا، الإشي هذا بإذن رب العالمين مش حيصير ومش حنطلع من بلادنا ومن أرضنا.
Meanwhile, some Israelis welcomed Trump's proposal for the US to take control of the Gaza Strip. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu praised the plan, saying it had the potential to change history, a sentiment shared by many Israeli residents.
בתור מי ששירת 8 חודשים בעזה במילואים האחרונים, אני חושב שצריך באופן חד משמעית להסכים עם התוכנית של טראמפ, לפנות את כל הערבים שם, לבנות שם שטח אחר. כל דבר שהוא אחר חוץ ממה שיש היום שם, לשקם את המקום הזה, ומה שיקרה מאז זה אלוהים גדול. אבל מה שבטוח, לתאר את המקום הזה פעם אחת זה מצוין לפי דעתי.
As global outrage over Trump's plan intensifies and Palestinian resistance holds firm, the future of Trump's plan remains uncertain. With Samia Afsar, Gargi Rawat for NDTV.
Demonstrators gathered in Washington, D.C. on Wednesday as part of a nationwide protest against the Trump administration's early actions. The protest outside the U.S. Capitol is one of a series organized, in fact, by an online movement dubbed 50501, which stands for 50 protests, 50 states, one day. Protesters aim to push back against a number of measures, in fact, being put into place by the administration of President Donald Trump, which they say violate federal law and U.S. Constitution, such as attempts to essentially dismantle the U.S. Agency for International Development, or USAID. Affected USAID workers were among the demonstrators. President Trump has signed a memorandum reimposing maximum pressure on Iran, aiming to deny the country a nuclear weapon and counter its malign influence. Now, the move is part of a broader effort to ramp up maximum economic pressure on the country. In response, Tehran has dismissed Trump's order as a quote-unquote failed experience. The country's currency, the rial, has in fact dropped to a record low of 850,000 rials per $1 US. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has instructed his administration to either alter or cancel the sanction waivers for the Chabahar port project, a decision that could hinder India's connectivity initiatives with the Central Asian country. It was in November 2018 that India received a sanction waiver for the port project from Trump during his first term. Now, ahead of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's potential White House visit that could happen as early as next week, Trump has ordered his administration to apply maximum pressure on Iran to end its nuclear threat, curtail its ballistic missile program, and stop its support for terrorist groups. US President Donald Trump is set to unveil his Ukraine peace plan next week. Now, this is according to Western media. The proposal is expected to, in fact, be presented at the Bavarian Conference, where Trump will likely outline his strategy for ending the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine. After a suspension lasting over 2 months, the Bangladesh Assistant High Commissioner in Agartala has resumed accepting visa applications as of Wednesday this week. Now, the move has been warmly received by numerous individuals eager to visit the neighboring Bangladesh for various purposes, including reuniting with relatives. The suspension of visa and consular services was initiated upon, quote-unquote, a security situation on the 3rd of December last year, following a security breach at the mission a day ago. And according to reports, Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla, who is also part of Donald Trump's administration in the US now, is likely to call on Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi during the latter's visit to the US next week. Now, PM Modi is expected to be in the US from the 12th to the 14th February after an invitation from US President Donald Trump. Musk is likely, in fact, also to be a part of a select group of CEOs who will meet PM Modi on the 13th of February. Musk has had plans to take Tesla cars into the Indian market for a few years now.